Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. Hope you guys are waking up and feeling great out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and weekend. I got you a video jammed packed with information. Of course, the first thing we'll discuss is updated information on what's going on, what is now Tropical Depression 4. This is forecast to become a tropical storm sometime over the next 24 hours. By the time we make a video tonight, this could potentially be a tropical storm, and that would make it Tropical Storm Debby, our next name out the hurricane list of names. So the first thing we'll do is we'll discuss what's going on with this system right now. We'll go over the latest information from the National Hurricane Center. We'll discuss all model guidance. And just remember, the stuff I show you is not an exact forecast, but what I can tell you is right off the dot, that a lot of model guidance now agree with one another that maybe some of these worst case scenarios, especially post Florida, the post Florida impact, which I think is most certainly going to happen, they agree on some of these worst case scenarios. So we're going to discuss all the possibilities that the models are showing us. Okay, we'll talk about impacts. We're going to spend a lot of time on that, the most time that we have spent since covering this tropical system. And then we're going to talk about the background out ahead of this system that could promote this to strengthen into a hurricane. In my opinion, I think this is going to become a hurricane. And then we're going to talk about steering currents. Yeah. So, and then we'll discuss what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48. So timestamps are throughout this entire video, guys. These videos are going to be long. It's going to be work to get through them, but I'm just going to slow it down, take my time. I don't believe in making an 8 to 10 minute video on this kind of stuff. I like getting very detailed. There's a lot of YouTube channels out there that make the shorter videos. And I don't blame you one bit if you can get all your information from there, but I like to show all the possibilities, explain what's going on in the atmosphere, and help you guys understand it more importantly. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put those in the comments below. So let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So let's make sure our cursor is working. It is. We're good to go. This is our tropical system right here. It's Tropical Depression 4. It's very large. It's been large its entire life. It's just been a huge tropical wave. Now depression, which means it has a defined low-level circulation beneath all this mid-level convection. So you can't really see it that well on satellite, but it's definitely there south of Cuba. So it's kind of been a scenario where the dominant vortice ended up being further south. So we had some big shifts to the west, and model guidance really, I would say, the last 12 hours of yesterday, like the back half of the day yesterday, into the overnight hours in the shorter term. And I'll explain what that means here in a second, but this is it. And I know, it doesn't look overly impressive, but I think this will look a lot different by the time we move over the next 24 to 48 hours. So a nice cyclonic spin to it. You see it kind of spinning like this. So a very large, broad spin. Now, it's interacting with Cuba, okay, the terrain of Cuba. And that's why I think if Cuba was not there, if you somehow move Cuba out of the way, and this is just the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, I think that this would already be Tropical Storm Debby, maybe even a hurricane. So the land interaction is kind of holding this system down right now. That's not going to be the case once this gets tucked into the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and that's exactly where this is going to begin to turn over the next 6 to 12 hours, as it's going to feel a weakness up here, which we'll talk about later in the video. And that right in this area, the sea surface temperatures, guys, are in the upper 80s to low 90s in certain areas. So this will have a lot of juice to work with as far as those warm sea surface temperatures. So that's what's going on with this system right now. Let's go over the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center. This is a tropical depression. It's still technically moving west-northwest of 16 miles per hour, 14 knots. I expect this to turn more northwest. In fact, it might already be doing so. Move back over Cuba and then get in kind of the between the Florida and Cuba area and eventually get tucked into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. But it's a 30 mile per hour tropical depression. 1,009 millibars, and it's going to be interesting seeing the hurricane hunters, fly out into this system over the next couple days to really get data from this and see how strong it does get before making landfall into Florida, which we are pretty confident it's going to do so. So that's it right here. Now, let's take a look. I love this site. you guys know that's been tuning into my channel for a while. It's called Zoom Earth, available to the public. It's like combining like Google Maps with the tropics. It's really cool. It's easy to use. But anyways, this is the actual cone from the National Hurricane Center, just not a traditional look. And I'm going to show you that too here in a second. But 30-mile-per-hour tropical depression. And guys, I want to reiterate this about 1,000,000 times. I'm making this video is around just before 7 a.m. So there's going to be another advisory that drops here in about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. Maybe by the time I'm done with this video. So I have a new advisory. I don't think this will bump up to a tropical storm, but the cone could shift a little bit. The peak intensity, I think, does shift, does change, okay? So forecast to be a 35-mile-per-hour tropical depression sometime this afternoon. Then by tonight, it should become a tropical storm, Debby, okay? Then by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, let's zoom into this a little bit. It's a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm, getting stronger. Then by tomorrow night, saying 2 a.m. Eastern time, Monday morning, a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm. And I really think that this will have an opportunity to hit hurricane status before making landfall, most likely in the Big Bend of Florida. Could be more so in the Panhandle, could be a little bit further south down the west coast of Florida. But we do have tropical storm watches in the Florida Keys, tropical storm warnings all the way up the west coast of Florida. Okay, and we'll kind of get a better look at this here in a second. Bear with me. I'll actually show you counties in Florida. But there's hurricane watches up. Right now, peak intensity, like I said, I'm making this video around 7 a.m. right now. Peak intensity is 70 miles per hour. I do think they'll bump the peak intensity up to hurricane status. I think they'll do it before landfall into Florida. I think just the waters in this area are too warm for this to stay limited. And we already see the structure of this depression right now. I think once it gets into this area, it's going to, I'm not going to say it's going to rapidly intensify, but it's going to, at minimum, steadily intensify. Okay, we keep this going. This will obviously weaken with land interaction with North Florida and then Southeast Georgia. And then see how it starts to turn northeast, gets back over the open waters off the coast of the Southeast, reorganizes, and I think the National Hurricane Center is staying a little bit more conservative for now, but it has it going back, has it going from a 40 to a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm sometime Tuesday p.m. into Tuesday night. Then, by the time we go from 2 a.m. Wednesday, guys, to 2 a.m. Thursday, this area to here is only 24 hours. That's not 12 hours. That's 24. This goes from a 50 to a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm. But, folks, I'm going to tell you right now, most model guidance shows this re-intensifying back into a hurricane. In fact, some model guidance has this getting bogged back to the south and then looping and coming back into the Carolinas. I'm about to show you all that. Okay, now this is your classic look from the National Hurricane Center, the typical cone that you see, and the S stands for storm, tropical storm, and when you see an H on there, that stands for hurricane, which I think we'll see sometime today. I really do. Maybe in the next advisory here in the next 30 to 45 minutes. One of the things that tears my nerves up when we're tracking a tropical system like this is how frequent it updates. A lot of times they'll drop a video and then they'll make changes, and sometimes I'm like, dang, it seems like all the information that I just gave you is obsolete, but it's not. It really is not. That's why I reiterated like 10 times in the beginning of these videos that this could change. But once you see an H, stands for hurricane, the H icon, and then once you see an M, that stands for a major hurricane, category 3 or higher. Okay. Now, I do want to take a closer look at these advisories and watches. Of course, the orange are heat advisories, but you see this kind of red color here. That's tropical storm watches up for Tampa, Fort Myers, Clearwater, etc. And then kind of the more doled out pinkish red color here. That's tropical storm watches. Flood watches up for the southern sections of Florida. And then you see this pink color here. That's hurricane watches. Okay, tropical storm watches a little bit inland. Now, I expect tropical storm watches to get issued further into southeast Georgia here in the coming day or two. Maybe tonight. Okay, so it's on. It's on, guys. Now, what a lot of people are waiting on, all model guidance here. Okay, so we're going to start off from this morning. We're going to go over global models, ensemble guidance, and some hurricane models. All right, so here it comes, the bottom of your screen. This is getting into tonight. Let's take it to Sunday morning, tomorrow morning. It's literally this right out in front of us, guys. 1,002 millibar low. This would be a tropical storm at this point as we're waking up to this time tomorrow morning. All right. Let's just focus on the track and the strength of this. We'll talk about impacts when we look at the hurricane models and then just the actual impacts of this. Okay. This moves north. We get into Sunday midday tomorrow. All right, 998 millibar low, 992 tomorrow evening, Sunday evening. Okay, the more that number drops, the stronger the system is getting. And then makes landfall sometime Sunday night into Monday morning. On the GFS, it shows maybe is around a 991, 990 millibar low. Now, if you're trying to guess the strength of the tropical system based off the millibar, I would say a 991 is probably a strong tropical storm, high end to a low end category 1 hurricane, like a 75, 80 mile per hour hurricane. And that's pretty much what the National Hurricane Center is saying. So, the GFS is pretty much, and the National Hurricane Center are both locked into each other as far as the track. Okay, this takes into the Big Bend of Florida. Not too bad. Now, I can tell you a strengthening tropical system, ask your friends over in Texas, they know, has more impacts, packs more of a punch than a weakening tropical system. Hurricane Idalia in this area last hurricane season was weakening. It still packed a heck of a punch, but it was weakening. But this continues to move inland, get over North Florida, bring impacts to everybody in North Florida, southeast Georgia, tropical storm force conditions, probably going to cancel stuff Monday. And then, check it out, by Monday evening, this is back off the coast of Georgia and the warm waters off the coast of the southeast. Not as warm as the eastern Gulf of Mexico, but very warm still. And watch how this number begins to drop again. 996, 993 Tuesday morning, bringing tons of rain, storm surge at the Carolina coastline, Georgia coastline. Tuesday evening, watch how this dips back southeast. Guys, watch that movement back southeast Tuesday evening. See how that number's beginning to drop, 984. It's like, okay, well, this is moving away. And then it turns again. All right, and then we're getting a Wednesday midday, 975 millibar hurricane. If I had to guess, that's probably a Category 2 hurricane. Once you start getting close to 970, you might start to flirt with a major hurricane, Category 3. Okay? But this starts to ooze back to the Georgia and South Carolina coastline. And ultimately, as we're getting into Thursday morning, this meanders off the coast of the southeast for literally a couple days. It makes a landfall, guys, into like Savannah, the low country of South Carolina, as a 975 millibar hurricane. It's a high-end Category 2 hurricane. If something like this was to play out, this will probably be, I would say, the worst tropical system since Hugo. And please don't freak out when I tell you that if you're along the coastline. But it's a possibility. I'm going to show you the model guidance, okay? The rest of it, too. I'm not just trying to show you the worst-case scenario and then head on out. I'm going over all of it. But, of course, it makes landfall Thursday morning, brings significant impacts inland. Okay? Now, what about the European, which typically takes a little bit more of a backseat? It's kind of like the old man, just is more conservative, and a lot of times it's the wise old man, and it's right. Okay? But watch what the European does. Now a stronger system in the earlier portion of the system. Sunday afternoon, we got a weak tropical storm. Makes landfall as just a tropical storm into the Big Bend of Florida sometime Sunday night and Monday morning. Now, I can say that the European does have a little bit more of a weaker bias with tropical systems. It does really well with winter weather, but we'll continue to keep moving. All right, so same thing as the GFS, sort of dances around into the southeast Georgia area, and then gets off the coast sometime Tuesday, and then sort of just brings significant impacts into the low country of South Carolina Tuesday evening. It doesn't get it quite as far off the coast. Well, it does actually. So I'm eating my words there. It looks like it doesn't. Didn't spend a ton of time going over the model guidance this morning. So, yeah, I mean, this certainly goes well off the coast of the southeast. It's not as far south, I guess I would say, is what I was trying to say, as the GFS, but gets well off the coast of the southeast again. It looks like it's heading away. I mean, look, looks like, all right, it's going to head on out. All right, but it's a 984 millibar low Wednesday evening, August the 7th. Then comes right back to the South Carolina coastline Thursday morning. Weirdly enough, kind of the same timeline as the GFS. It makes landfall around Charleston as like a Category 1 hurricane. And instead of scraping it, it kind of just bulls right into the coastline. A lot of these hurricanes in the Carolinas, guys, they just make near misses. They scrape. They kind of grind. But some of these scenarios show it just bulldozing right into the coastline, which we have not seen much of that. Hugo was a huge example of that. Just went beeline right into the coastline. But it kind of does what the GFS does, right? Takes this and then brings widespread impacts into late next week. Yeah, that's how long we're talking about this in such a short, such a small amount of area, relatively speaking, and just a few states. Okay. So what about the icon model, which has shown some of these more aggressive scenarios for a while now? Sunday afternoon, we have a strengthening system off the west coast of Florida. This makes landfall similar strength as the GFS, maybe a little bit weaker as a tropical storm. Monday morning, the timeline of it's a little bit slower. More so makes a landfall well into Monday morning instead of like Sunday night into the wee hours of the morning Monday. Brings this right over North Florida, right over southeast Georgia, brings impacts tropical storm force conditions Monday into Tuesday. Tuesday gets this off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina, but it's close enough to where it's just bringing tons of storm surge, heavy rain in the eastern counties, the eastern sections of South Carolina and Georgia, all the way up into North Carolina. Now, the icon's a little bit different, okay? It continues to sort of chug to the northeast. I mean, this is like Wednesday morning, bringing impacts along the South Carolina and southeast North Carolina coastline. And then it gets right here. It's a 960 millibar low. This will be a major hurricane off the coast of the Grand Strand, Wilmington. And then it actually makes it looks like it goes on. This only goes 120 hours out. So it takes us to about late Wednesday night, Thursday morning. All right, it goes on. It looks like it's about to make a landfall north of the Wilmington area, kind of north of, between Wilmington and the southern sections of the Outer Banks. It looks like it's about to make a landfall as a major hurricane. So the icon stalls it, slows it, doesn't do any crazy jog south, but more so makes that landfall into North Carolina. Okay, so all three of those are bad scenarios. I mean, the European maybe is the weaker scenario. Now, I don't have the Canadian model up. The Canadian model doesn't do the best. I like to show it more so when we're kind of in the earlier stages of tracking tropical systems, but it does just show it sort of just moving inland after it makes landfall in Florida. But if we're looking at the European ensemble guidance, the EPS, remember this makes up 51 members, throws them on the screen if 51 members form. If it's only 30 is going to form. But anyways, the European ensemble makes that landfall. Some of these members still well over the central panhandle of Florida area. But a lot of them are actually locked in to the northern Big Bend and to the panhandle coastline. So this is actually, I would say the European ensemble is a little bit west of the actual center of the cone from the National Hurricane Center. But all these L's, most of them, all of them, eventually hook to the east. Look how they all get back off the coast, just about most of them, of Georgia and South Carolina. Some of them escape. Okay, you see these kind of escaping away, but a lot of them get slowed here. You see the L's just kind of dancing around, and then they get yanked back north. Now, I can tell you there's not a whole lot of super strong members on this, but a lot of times this is more conservative. Okay. Now, if we look at, I don't have it up. Let's see. I'm going to do this on the fly, guys. So y'all bear with me. If we look at the GFS ensemble, this is the latest one too. So we got some new information. Here comes, this only makes up 21 members, only 21. This is the 06Z. No, I think this is, let's see. Y'all bear with me. I'm sorry. I just want to get you guys the updated information. Yeah, this is the 06Z. So once again, makes landfall, comes up. What is it going to do after that? Okay. And this is going to have to load a little bit. You see these members. You see how those members are sort of jogging back east, almost southeast. So some of it's following that run by the operational GFS. Okay. And some of them begin to strengthen. And this is as far out as it goes. Okay. But makes landfall in Florida, gets off the coast of the southeast. What happens after that? It's a big question. All right. And here's some hurricane model guidance. From Tropical Tidbits. I like to show you guys this too, but makes that landfall in Florida. And then a lot of these members sort of look like they stall out right here and then sort of get pushed back into the South Carolina coastline. In fact, most of these members do. Okay. Now, if you look at some of the hurricane model guidance, and let's see if we have any new guidance, and we probably do, but it doesn't go out far enough. And it only goes out 54 hours. So, guys, we actually might have to just use the OOZ run here. But there's two of them that are initializing good. One thing when you're looking at these hurricane models, you pick the ones that are initializing the best. And I think that the HFA model, I believe, and the HMON model is initializing the best right now. The other two are initializing north of Cuba, I believe. So we keep this going. This is going to get over Cuba. This is the southwestern sections of Florida, and this is we're gonna start oozing the impacts too. So hurricane models and impacts here. Now watch what happens here. Now this is Florida. This is Tampa Bay right here. Fort Myers down here. 998 millibar low Sunday morning, tomorrow morning. Look how that number begins to drop. Of course, as the number begins to drop, strengthening system, you start to see more intense convection. But this actually brings this system more so into the panhandle. Makes a landfall Monday morning into the panhandle as a 989 millibar low. That's a borderline Category 1 hurricane. Okay? And then it goes on to actually get all the way into southwest Georgia. And it really doesn't like the idea of getting much off the coast of the southeast. The hurricane models don't. So that's something to note here. Now, the ones that are coming in now might be a little different. Now, if I look at the 06Z, I think this only goes out about 54 hours. So it looks like a similar setup. Looks like it's heading right towards more so the panhandle. Similar strength at this at around 5 a.m. as the OOZ. Yeah, I mean, very, very similar strength. Maybe a little bit weaker. All right, what about the HMON model? Here it comes, initializing pretty well south of Cuba. Strengthens this to a sub 1,000 millibar low sometime Sunday. And here it comes, kind of making a landfall, similar area as the HFA model. A little bit stronger, though. I would say this would be a Category 1 hurricane to the panhandle of Florida, right where the panhandle and the Big Bend meet. I'll start to mention more so names here in the next couple of videos, kind of town names in this area. Makes landfall here. Then proceeds to bring a lot of tropical storm force conditions into Georgia. But once again, like the HFA model, it really doesn't do a whole lot with getting it off the coast of the southeast. So that's something to note there. And this is the latest HMON model, the 06Z. Now it has shifted a little bit back. It looks like it's shifted a little bit further back to the east, and it's a stronger system. This is an all-out Category 1 hurricane. Makes landfall a little bit further east into the bend of Florida. So that's something to note. A little bit stronger there. All right. So let's talk about impacts. So this is, let's see if we've had any updated information. We do not. So latest rainfall potential. It's kind of a broad look between now and the next 5 days. So Tampa, they're going for anywhere from 4 to 8 inches of rain. All right. North Florida, same thing, guys. If you live in kind of this orange shade, that's kind of 6 to 8. Jacksonville, I would say 4 to 6, maybe 8 inches. But look up here once you get on the Georgia and South Carolina, southeast North Carolina coastline. Folks, that is 8 to 12 inches of rain. I'll be honest, I'm concerned about you folks in Florida and southeast Georgia. I'm very concerned. I live in South Carolina, by the way. I'm very concerned about South Carolina. I really am. And we'll dive more into that later on down the road, but I'm very concerned. I am. I'm not going to sit here and say I have like a sinking feeling in my stomach or anything like that, but I am concerned. Okay, if you're living around the South Carolina coastline, you in the North Carolina coastline, Georgia too, you definitely want to pay attention to this. All right, a little bit better look at rainfall potential. There's just kind of a better look at things here, and we'll kind of go up to the Carolinas too and Georgia. But, I mean, look at all that rain for the west coast of Florida. That's a lot, guys. And then we'll kind of move up the road here and look at this. I mean, there's some disagreement right here with the National Weather Service in Columbia and Greenville, Spartanburg. But, I mean, already calling for 3 to 4 inches of rain in this area. A lot of this is going to fall today. There's going to be I'm going to talk about this here in a second, but there's a big rainmaker in the Carolinas today. But anyways, as far as the probability of tropical storm force winds, this is increasing into the Big Bend and Panhandle of Florida. But I mean, even in like Tampa, there's a 30 to 50% chance of tropical storm force conditions. That's pretty much 40 miles per hour or higher. And I mean, it's increased to like 60 to 70% chance in the Big Bend. So it's certainly coming. If we look at the timeline of these tropical storm force conditions, you're going to start to see it. I mean, as early as this afternoon along the southwest coast of Florida, Big Bend areas of Florida, more so tomorrow morning. And then, of course, the timeline, we just got to watch is all next week along the Georgia and South Carolina and Carolina coastline. So if we look at a closer look, and I'm just going to look at the HMON model. In fact, I'm going to look at the latest one because I think we have a new one. Let's see if it's going to show up. We do not. So we got to just look at the one from last night. Well, the OOZ one from just overnight. So this is winds in miles per hour. And if something like the HMON model would happen here, and we'll kind of get detailed with this when we know more where this is going to make landfall, this would bring, you see in that whitish pink area, that's winds pushing 60, 70 miles per hour in that wall right into here. So very strong winds, obviously getting pushed into these areas with any kind of strengthening tropical system. Just bring that 60 to 70, 80 miles per hour. This isn't gust either. This is persistent winds. And of course, you're going to get power outages into North Florida and to Georgia. Strong, gusty winds. But we got a lot to figure out into Georgia and the Carolinas. I don't want to get too far. But storm surge, of course, right now, see if there's any new information. Yep, 3 to 5 feet into the Big Bend, 2 to 4 feet, Tampa Bay, 2 to 4 feet, Charlotte Harbor, 2 to 4 feet, 1 to 3 feet down here in the southeast coastline of Florida. Guys in Florida, you're going to have to help me with this one. I'm not even going to try. But this area right here, the river, Indian Pass, 1 to 3 feet. If you're a new viewer, I butcher the heck out of names. I try. I really do. That's part of getting detail with this channel, but it's tough sometimes with pronouncing stuff. But sea surface temperatures, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, guys. I mean, this system is right here. Okay? This is going to work into this body of water right here. All right? 31, 32 degrees Celsius, folks. That's sea surface temperatures in Fahrenheit in the upper 80s to close to the low 90s. So rocket fuel as far as sea surface temperatures for this to deal with. Rocket fuel. So has a plenty of fuel. Okay. It's honestly just I honestly think the thing that's going to prevent this from really, really popping off in the shorter term before making landfall in Florida is just the limited time over water. One thing we'll talk about that we kind of didn't talk about last night, yesterday morning's video, is the upper wind pattern. Folks, the only thing that's keeping a lid on this system right now is the land interaction with Cuba. But it actually has an extremely favorable upper wind pattern right now. Okay, we know that these tropical systems, they turn cyclonically like this. But if you look above this, if you look really closely at these lines and these arrows embedded in these lines, this is winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere, like 35, 40,000 feet. So in the upper levels of the atmosphere, the air is getting actually dispersed outward. It has a nice outflow. Kind of divergence aloft is what we call it. Okay? Air is being dispersed outward and like the other direction in some cases of the actual low level and mid-level circulation. So basically air is rising in the middle of the storm, right? Then air is getting pushed away, dispersed outward. More air rises, that gets pushed away. More air rises, that gets pushed away. So the upper wind pattern is very favorable right now. This is going to continue. If you don't know about what I just said, rising air allows for more shower and storm development. Sinking air does not. So we'll continue to explain that. But the thing is this is going to continue to be the case. I mean, air is being dispersed out away from the storm right here. And then check it out. After it gets off the coast of the southeast, it's a little bit different. It's probably going to deal with a little bit of shear, but air is still getting pushed out from the system. Now, we do have something going on right here that could create a little bit of shear on the southern side of this system. But in general, air is still being dispersed out, and I think the environment will still be favorable off the coast of the southeast. And what about these wacky steering currents? What's going on with this system? Why is it so weird? Well, guys, I'm going to tell you right now, and I do not say this much. It's going to turn people off, but, I keep it real on this channel. This is not the government steering this tropical system, okay? And I know, like, people are going to disagree with me. All this is what we call a shortwave trough in the atmosphere. Happens weekly, just about. It literally does. It's a weekly thing. And this blue area, that is a lower pressure, okay? And the reddish pink area, that is high pressure. So low pressure, high pressure. So our system down here is about to show up on your screen down here as low pressure because a tropical system, right? So let's keep this going. This feature right here is a big player. It's a player this morning. You can see it on, I'm going to just pull it up on the fly, okay? Because I just really want to show you this feature actually on satellite here. You see it right here? See this little thing diving down right here? That is your shortwave trough, your upper trough of low pressure. That's diving down, tropical system right here. That thing diving down is creating a weakness in the ridge. Ridge here, ridge here. This thing diving down here is creating a weakness into here. That's why this is going to start to turn north. It probably already is right now. Okay, so that's what's going on. I mean, it's literally what's going on in the atmosphere like right now. Okay, so we go back to this. Let's make sure we got our color back to black here. Okay, here it comes. You see the blue coming up at the bottom of your screen? That is Debby on the way. Debby is now turning north because of this weakness created by this upper trough. Now you see the blue up here disappear now. It's gone. Okay, and before we keep going, I want you to remember, flow around high pressure ridging goes like this. Okay, so this is a ridge feature, so the flow around this is going like this. The flow around this one is going like this. The flow on the other side of this ridge, on the east side, is going just like this, except this is the west side of the ridge. So weakness right into here is wide open. This system's going to head on up. Okay, now what happens after this? Keep this going. Ridge builds on top of this system, and all of a sudden this system is going to slow down because it feels the pull up under this ridge. So this is really negatively affecting the system. Now it's still able to move north, okay, somewhat, but it's starting to sort of getting pulled this way, because you got to remember there's a flow around this ridge going like this. Okay, so flow kind of coming around like this. All right, like that. Flow's coming up like this. So this is the flow around the ridge over the Atlantic is actually trying to help this system move, but it's kind of counterproductive because the flow around this ridge right here on top of it is sort of bogging it down too. So what is that pretty much? What is that? What is the conclusion of that? Well, it slows down this system because you kind of got gears not really working together here in the upper levels of the atmosphere, the upper level steering patterns. So you get all this back going and you continue to move this forward. You pretty much got like ridging almost built on top of this system right into here. Okay, so it can feel the flow of this actually pushing it back down. So this is going like this now. So this is going to feel the steering currents, and that's why on the GFS it actually pushes this system back down into here. Like you're going to see this blue area kind of go more so where I just drew the circle in the L, because the steering currents is now pushing it back down. Even though this is very light ridging, it's still feeling that because this is still relatively a weaker tropical system. If this was a full-fledged category 3 or 4 hurricane, it's probably going to be a little bit more north than what this is showing, and it still could be. Not a category 4 or 5 hurricane, but it still could be further north. Now you keep this going. Now watch what happens as this area in orange sort of disappears. As soon as that area in orange disappears, the ridging, it feels that weakness, wide open weakness right here. Huge trough, by the way, digging down, going to cool down the upper portion of the country. This just decimates the ridge. You got a wide open weakness here. So all of a sudden this system, and there's still some ridging over here. It's just very weak. So this is probably pushing up on this a little bit too. And you keep this going, and ultimately this starts to head. Well, really what happens here, remember I just drew this area over here. Watch what happens. I think if you stopped it here and you had no ridging building over here, this would probably move maybe like this or maybe like that. But watch what happens on the right side of your screen right here. Watch what you see show up here. Ridging builds back over the Atlantic. What does that do? Well, it pushes it back this way. So it pushes the system back that way. Okay, so that's why it starts to move kind of northwest instead of maybe north or either northeast. That ridge builds back over the system, high pressure, and pushes that low back into the coastline. Okay, and then there's just a wide open weakness right here, and this is going to head on off, feel that weakness, and then that's all she wrote. Okay, so wild stuff, right? I hope you understood that. I feel like I explained it pretty well, but if you got questions, ask them. So let's talk about what's going to happen weather-wise across the lower 48 today. And guys, for my folks that's just tuning in for the weather for today, just note that my energy will be lower. The details won't be as there for the daily forecast. This is it's very hard to keep up during these times because you got to put a lot of energy for the update on the tropics, and then you want to keep the same energy for the update on the daily forecast. So if I miss some areas, don't get as detailed as possible. I do apologize. I really do. It hurts me a little bit, but I'm not a machine. I'm a human. You guys know that. So it's kind of tough to keep up with everything. especially when you just got things outside of the weather life going on. But we got rain in the Northeast. We got rain in the Ohio Valley. We got downpours across the Panhandle of Florida. We got an area complex of rain that's moved south of Dallas now. Energy up here in Canada about to surge into the Great Lakes region. We got some much needed rain falling across the western states, so that's good. So that's what's going on right now. Watches, warnings, and advisories. Of course, I've done discussed what's going on in Florida. I will kind of let you guys get a better look at Florida. Tropical storm warnings up for the red color. Tropical storm watch up for the lighter red color, pink. Heat advisories in the orange. Excessive heat warnings in this purple. Hurricane watch in this more pink color. Flood watches up for the Carolinas, areas of Georgia for a stalled frontal boundary that we'll discuss here in a second. Heat advisories in southern New England. Heat advisories scattered across the rest of the U.S. with some red flag warnings in this hot pink color. Now, the flooding risk for today, you see this weird long area that's a slight risk. That is because of this shortwave trough diving down. That's going to kind of weaken, sort of stall out. That's going to create kind of a corridor of showers and storms across this entire area today, right over my neck of the woods. Probably going to get some big storms. But we have a slight risk in the yellow, which means there's a 15% chance of flash flood guidance being met within 25 miles in any given location. Storm Prediction Center today, there's a slight risk in Minnesota and North Dakota today. So we could get some big storms in this area for today. So definitely be aware of that. And then some of these storms could be severe in the Carolinas, Virginia, the Mid-Atlantic, a level 2 out of 5 risk, a tornado threat. We need to watch out for tornadoes from a tropical system. This happens on the right side of the system. We'll talk more on that in tonight's video. There's a 2% risk of tornadoes, more so later this evening in southwest of Florida. The wind threat will be the biggest threat today in these two yellow areas. That is a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. Same thing with this yellow area. And then the hail threat, we do have a risk of significant hail in the yellow area. That's a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. In the black outline region, that is a 10% chance to see significant hail approaching 2 inch in diameter or larger. Southeast today, you're going to see a couple things going on. You're going to see our tropical system to the south. We're going to see numerous showers and storms across the Carolinas and Georgia. Some areas will get more rain than others. Some areas will get a lot of rain. And then we're just going to get these tropical downpours, these basically banding features over southern areas of Florida. And some of these could produce some tornadoes. Typically, remember, on the right side, the east side of these tropical systems, northeast quadrant, even northern quadrant, we can get tornadoes. So expect that tornado risk to be there overnight tonight across the west coast of Florida, especially southwest coast of Florida. And then we start to get a big pool of tropical moisture into the Carolinas tomorrow. And kind of tomorrow is the big day where everything really starts to kind of come together. But a closer look at the Carolinas and Georgia. These storms are going to form and barely move, guys. A very stormy afternoon for certain areas across central Georgia, the central areas of Carolinas. These storms will move eventually this evening. Will kind of form right over maybe the Midlands of South Carolina, Piedmont of North Carolina, then drift to the east. And they could pack some punch with some damaging winds, some flooding. But definitely expect a very rainy afternoon and evening across the Carolinas up to Virginia to Georgia today. Rainfall between now and the next 24 hours. Could get several inches of rain just between now and the next 24 hours in southwest Florida. A corridor of 1 inch to 2 inches of rain is possible from south central Georgia. I mean, even southern Alabama, the Panhandle of Florida, all the way up to central South Carolina and North Carolina to southern VA today. So northeast, dealing with some storms this morning, but we're going to get widespread storms across PA today, northern West Virginia, western Maryland, northern Virginia. Some storms are possible in eastern Ohio. Some of this storm action will cruise into New York City, New Jersey, Delaware. Could be a stormy night out on the town, so definitely be prepared for that. In New York City, Long Island, some of these storms will get all the way into southern New England later tonight, but probably will lose some steam. And we could wake up tomorrow morning to some widespread rain in New England for sure. So south central U.S., we got a little bit of energy that might surge down from Kansas. Some pop-up downpours will be welcomed here in central Texas, even southern Louisiana. So could get some scattered downpours in this area. And then as we get into the daytime, into the morning time tomorrow morning, could be dealing with some downpours along the southeast coastline. But up here in the north central U.S., we have to watch for some strong to severe storms later tonight. This evening. More so. You see these kind of lone supercells right here, kind of north of Minneapolis. There's not much there, guys. This is a very isolated slight risk. But there's going to be 1 or 2 supercells maybe in like central. I mean, there's like nothing showing up here in South Dakota. Let me make sure I had the right graphic here. Yeah, I did. So we're good. But there is a slight risk for like eastern North Dakota and then central Minnesota, guys. I'm sorry, eastern South Dakota, central Minnesota. There's just not a lot really showing up here. But 1 or 2 of these storms could really pack a punch. Models could be underdoing this in this area. So be aware of those. Some of these showers will continue to move throughout Wisconsin. And yeah, could have a big cool down on the way for this area, that area of the country. Western U.S., some isolated to scattered showers are possible from Oregon, northern Cal, Nevada. Some possible here in Utah, Arizona, New Mexico. It's very possible here, and some of this could get pushed northward, but just very light activity across the western U.S. So temperatures today, 70s, a little bit of cooler air here, but nobody super hot across the eastern U.S., 70s, 80s, 90s. Middle of the country, well into the 90s here, so this will definitely be the hottest part of the country. It's starting to really heat up in the southwest, so be aware of that. But these are temperatures, and yeah, that's all I got. I'm out of gas here. We'll do it again tonight. It's pretty much full send ahead on these videos, so definitely stay tuned, and got you covered. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful Saturday.